to the Waffle Flower channel. This is It's in the Details. I'm Nicole, and today I'm showcasing the Trick or Treat stamp set and coordinating dies. Let's get started. I'm taking several images from the Trick or Treat stamp set, and I'm going to be using the Misty. I've got a piece of smooth white Neenah cardstock here. I'm going to hold it down with some magnets, and I'm laying out the images I'm going to use. I'm going to pick them all up at once with the clear cover of the Misty Stamp Positioner tool, ink them up with an ink that works good for Copic coloring, and then I'm going to stamp that. And you can see the images are really light. One of the things I like to do, it's a detail-oriented technique, is to stamp that image several times, one on top of each other. In fact, I'm going to stamp it 3 times to get crisp, dark black stamped images. Makes a huge difference. I'm going to go ahead and color in my images with some Copic markers using about 3 shades per pumpkin. But to add even more interest to these pumpkins, I am using different color combinations for each. So I've kind of got my rust or traditional colors that I often use for pumpkins. And then I'm going to do a lighter pumpkin here. The colors I'm using are shown across the top of your screen. If you're wondering at all throughout the process of this card what exact colors I'm using, I do list them across the top or bottom of the screen depending on the video, just for easy reference. So kind of got the traditional dark russet type pumpkin, a lighter yellowy orange pumpkin. This is going to be your typical kind of brighter orange pumpkin. I did end up darkening it a little bit with a little YR24. Originally I thought I'd use some blue violet markers for shadowing, and I just didn't like that. But I thought it was a little too orangey, so I will go back over that in a minute. Then I'm using some awesome green colors with a little bit of that yellow-red color mixed in to resemble some of those greenish orange pumpkins you might see at the pumpkin patch or at the store. I'm going in with the tip of my marker and adding some little dot detail to a couple of the pumpkins, not all of them, just to kind of give that illusion. Some of those pumpkins have got some of those little bumps all over them, so that's what I'm doing there. Coloring in the tops of the pumpkins with some brown markers. And then I'm going to move on to my broom, feathering in the colors here to help it look like an actual broom. Adding a little color up above. I'm going to skip over and color in the fox. I wasn't quite sure at this point what colors I wanted to use for the rest of the broomstick, so I went ahead and colored in the fox. Lighter areas for that little area on his face, the tip of his tail, and his front paws. Darker for the rest. You can go over it several times if necessary, which is what I did, just to get the coloring exactly the way I wanted it to look, the shadowing and shading and all of that. Couple of colors of brown for the broom handle. Some nice grays for my cute little bat here. So fun. See 9, 6, and 1, I believe. Blend that out, a little R00 for the cheeks, and that was C8, pardon me. And then I'm going to use some blue violets that have a lot of gray undertones, but just enough of that purple in them that I love for Halloween coloring for the hat, and a yellow band around the top. I'll color in the band around the broom with those same blue violets. Images with the coordinating Trick or Treat dies, I use a little post-it tape to hold them in place while I run them through the machine. I'll just lay all of those to the side while I work on building the background now. I am going to take the awesome new Lacy Layers 2 dies and die cut that from some smooth white cardstock. And I've already trimmed down a rectangle to standard A2 size, so 5.5 by 4.25 inches. And I centered one of those Lacy Layer dies there, and I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to use every piece from this die cut. So when you pop it out, there's the inside rectangle, the outside rectangle, and then there's going to be a little spacer piece there as well, which I've just set aside. I am not going to add color to that little spacer piece. I'm going to leave it white. It's going to add another great little dimension to the whole scene and really set apart both the frame and the background for this card design. I like to lay out the elements I'm going to use. That way I know where I have room to stamp my greeting. I'm going to stamp the I'm Bats About You with Versamark ink, sprinkle on some white embossing powder, and then I will add some stars from the Trick or Treat stamp set as well. Scatter those about. I like to do about two or three, and then add the embossing powder so I can see where I've been. I'll add a few more, sprinkle on more embossing powder until I get it exactly the way I want it to look. Then I will take the heat tool and go ahead and heat that all up. I'm going to do a little embossed resist with some distress inks. I'm keeping my heat gun moving so I don't scorch the paper. You can see the embossing powder melting there. On this inside panel, I'm going to start fairly light and work up to darker. I'm applying chipped sapphire and wilted violet distress inks. When working on a smooth white cardstock as opposed to a watercolor cardstock, I find that the lighter hand you use, the better, at least until you get that paper saturated and get those colors working and blending together to build a great background. In this instance, I want to create kind of a spooky Halloween themed background, so I love that dark blue and purple together. And where I've embossed, that area is resisting the inks. So there's kind of my background. That's going to look great, I think, with all of my little images popped on top. So super cute. One of my favorite things to do is continue that background inked design on the outside frame as well. Originally, I did go in and add some white gel pen to the whites of the eyes on all of my critters. Added a little black gel pen to the nose, but I found that the eyes still didn't pop quite as much as I wanted them to, so I will go back and add a little more detail to that in just a second. This is where I am going to take that detail to the frame, where I'm just copying what I did for the background scallop rectangle and applying wilted violet distress ink and chipped sapphire distress ink, blending them together where they meet, trying to be careful I don't want to accidentally wrinkle or rip my paper. Make sure it blends really nicely where those two colors meet, and that adds such a great definition to the frame. Now I want to add even more detail to my background rectangles. So I'm going to just take those, lay those there, move everything else to the side, and I've added picket fence distress paint, applied water to it. I'll take a small paintbrush and then just flick that all over the surface. Next, I'm going to take the brushed pewter distress paint. Again, pick it up with a small paintbrush and flick that all over the surface for some nice silver sparkle. I applied foam tape to the back of the frame, but I applied it in such a way that both that white little skinny frame and the outside frame are attached together. I'll apply some some Permatac adhesive to the center, replace the center with my ink splattered background with the greeting, and then I simply need to attach the rest of my elements. So that great little stack of pumpkins, I'm going to set the fox on one of the pumpkins, add the broom kind of tipped to the corner. Instead of her flying on her broomstick, it's just sitting there while she's sitting in the pumpkin patch. Add the hat to the fox, and then I'm going to attach my bats up there in the upper left corner. I like to, because the inside rectangle is flush with the card and the outside frames have foam adhesive, I attached foam adhesive to parts of the bat and then a glue dot to the part that's going to be on that outside frame that's already raised. Now I went back in, added black gel pen to the eyes. Once it's completely dry, I will add those white little dots back, and the eyes really pop now. I love how they look. One of the best ways to make eyes really pop. Thanks for joining me today for this It's in the Details card showcasing the Trick or Treat stamps and coordinating dies. For more product information, please visit waffleflower.com. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas.